How's it going, salad dodgers? I was debating whether to start it like that because, do you guys dodge salad?
You don't make friends with salad, if that's what you're asking.
No. Out of 9 years of being a vegetarian, I found that out the hard way. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hammerbarn Project. I'm Brendan.
This is Frank.
And this is Marty.
And let me tell you about a little something that we like to do. We like to catch up, and we like to talk about Bluey, because who doesn't? Let's be honest. We all do it anyway.
You're all doing it.
You know, you're just talking about Bluey with all your workmates and all your family 24/7. So what else could you possibly want to do when you get in your car or get home to your Bluetooth speaker and to pop on a little bit of the Hammerbarn Project? You know what I'm saying?
What are you saying?
I'm saying something that doesn't make sense because I don't need to convince the people who are already listening.
You're just trying to describe people's day as they go home to their Bluetooth speaker. I mean, most people go home to a family of some description, but I'm now picturing a little Bluetooth speaker in a bassinet. Is that what's happening here?
Oh, little guy.
He's got a little apron on. It's
Little Bluey.
This episode of the Hammerbarn Project is called BAUXITE.
I'll tell you what I am doing. I'm just talking because I'm excited that I get to do a podcast with a couple of my best friends.
It's what we do.
It's what we do. Oh, seeing as we're doing a podcast, and we're doing a podcast about Bluey because it's the greatest show.
Yep.
What episode should we do a podcast about?
This episode of Bluey is called Puppets.
You better believe it.
We are talking, what is this, season 3? This is part of the
Most recent drop.
Yeah.
Season 3.25 drop or whatever.
It's part of the third quarter of season 3.
So if you are one of our international listeners, you may and you have been a good dog and not change the location of your computer in order to watch all of season 3, you may wish to just put this episode on pause, come back to it. We do know that season 3 is dropping on Disney Plus and various other territories around the world very shortly.
Oh boy.
If not already by the time this episode airs.
It would already be, I think.
That's right. But yes, come join us on this journey of puppets.
Let's
Marty,
go.
take us through it.
okay. Bare bones. So this is a fairly obvious one, actually. So it's a pretty clear unpacking of Nick Bostrom's simulation argument, which,
Do you even need to say that?
Obviously.
Yeah, probably not. So let's move on. It's the concept that, based on a few simple assumptions, we are, in all probability, living in a simulation. So, if technology continues to advance, if completely, post-human civilizations would want to run simulations, they'd probably be running a whole bunch. And statistically, there'd be way more not real worlds. There'd be way more simulated worlds than real ones. So it's far more likely they were actually living in a simulation.
If you crunch the numbers, it's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And, if you follow the white rabbit and you take the red pill, that's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same. Yeah. Yeah, you got it, Frank. It's the Matrix. It's simulation and simulacra. It's funnily enough, it probably is a bit of all of those things.
Yeah.
It's a bit, this is one of those weird episodes in which my ridiculous thing actually starts to get a bit too close to the truth.
It's a bit too real.
I was playing along because you were using lots of big words, and then I actually remembered what episode we're talking about. I thought, actually, that's probably, it is that bonkers.
Pretty on point.
But yeah, what's the episode about in more simple terms to explain?
Yeah, go on, Marty. Explain this episode simply. Go on. Have a go. Have a go. Let me
Watch
hear
him
it.
squirm.
It's a weird episode in terms of flow because the kind of goal of it changes multiple times.
Yeah.
So it starts off with Bluey not eating properly, and then Unicorse appears, and then Unicorse falls in love with Chili, and then it's about him trying to get the admiration of Chili, and then it's him finding out he's a puppet. So it just keeps on changing.
It's so much going on. Oh man, it's like they just keep upping the game and upping the game and upping the game. And I don't mean that just in this episode. I mean that in the series of Bluey that we watch.
So true.
Correct.
Like some of the most recent ones are just ball out of the park. I keep on telling you guys I want to talk about space, and you keep on knocking me back. So.
I don't think we're ready for that.
Only because I told you I need to watch more sci-fi before I do, because there's a couple I'm not going to admit what I haven't seen yet, because that's embarrassing.
Is it 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Before you said that, I'm so glad I said that I wasn't going to say what it is.
That would be embarrassing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, rolled up newspapers all around, by the way.
Oh, actually, no, that's what I was going to say. It's a bit like Weekend, really, because it's similarly, it starts at the kitchen table, and Weekend is this really odd juxtaposition of various different little stories that, you're never quite sure what the end argument is going to be, or the, the moral.
Asparagus is another one that starts at the dinner table.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
That's true.
So much. What did I want to say? Like, there's the moment of this episode, like the moment.
Let's hold off on that.
That's what I'm thinking. There's
the
the bit in this episode that sets this episode apart from all other episodes, and I'm so glad it's come at a time sort of when Bluey is so established worldwide, because it's totally. Who could argue that it hasn't earned the right to pull, to throw these kind of huge punches? But yeah, let's get into that a bit later.
So this is one that was actually advertised or clued into as part of the season 3 sort of press release, or the little clips and trailers leading into the release, that our friend Unicourse is coming back.
Yeah,
So this is, the return of Unicourse is the unofficial subtitle of this episode. And basically, I'm just going to throw my catchphrase out just to get it out the way. He's the real star of this episode, right?
Let's talk about
the real star of this episode. Unlike the other one, the original Unicourse, where it starts out being funny, and by the end of it, you're just like, do you know what? I'm almost siding with Chili here. If that was my partner doing that with the puppet, you'd want to just This is a bit of a different Unicourse, and it's Unicourse's story, and I love the whole. I almost feel like the animation from a Unicourse perspective has gone up a notch as well. Like there's the montage of him trying to improve and have a shower and brush his teeth, and he does the little like crunch. You can almost picture Bandit's hand in there doing the little crunches like a what's that famous puppeteer?
What's his name?
Dim Jensen.
Martin, it's Jim Henson. How could you not know that?
Like it's puppeteering that Jim would be proud of, I think, and you can almost see Kermit making some of those faces.
Yes, especially the bit 100%. Where he turns around after looking down at his legs.
Yeah,
and like Unicourse just goes, "What are you talking? They're just normal," and just goes. And then Bandit's sort of kind of scared to look at him in the eye, and Unicourse just kind of turns around slowly. Without Bandit moving. It's just, I love that that's impossible. I love how it makes it better.
Yeah, there's so many things about the way that Unicourse is presented in this one that's absolutely brilliant. One of the things that changes the most, I think, is that Bandit or whoever's controlling Unicourse is visible on screen. And they just kind of cover their mouths, which does, you know I was going to get there, but, because it is a puppetry episode, but it just reminds me of this little bit with Jim Henson talking about doing Kermit and how they were originally afraid that having Kermit with a puppeteer on screen would break the magic. And that people really wouldn't like that very much. But then they discovered, they just kind of figured out that it doesn't matter. And then there's a great line because he's got Kermit on his arm, he's got Kermit sitting in front of him. And Kermit just kind of leans into the camera and says, because nobody cares about what the bearded man is doing. And it's entirely true. It's like, when... And you do it in this one as well. Like, Unicourse is so much more interesting than watching Bandit. So you're willing to suspend disbelief even if he is on screen. So it's interesting that they kind of crossed that line as well. They cover their mouths,
that's
kind
cool.
of on and off. But it's the same idea that he's far more.
Nobody cares about what the bearded man's doing. Yeah. Well, I love all the ways in which the bearded man, in this case Bandit, sort of covers his mouth and I just did it when I was talking, which is great podcasting. Yep. But then there's other bits where he's just kind of down below the couch or down below the table. But even when he is down below, you can see his eyes in this one as opposed to the Unicourse episode, and you can see just the top part of the mouth, the part of his face near the mouth still moving, and it's so much fun. Talking about things that are different about Unicourse than the Unicourse episode, did we establish in the Unicourse episode how soft his horn was? Was that established?
I think you get
love
a
that
little bit from the
development.
wobble.
Yeah,
when he turns around.
you see it wobble, but then he goes, "You're gonna get
Get
the
the
horn,"
horns.
and it's just like obviously, it's obviously
foam.
a stuffed cone of fabric.
Well, you were saying before, like, you know, they've upped the game with the animation of Unicourse. I was watching Bluey with Naomi today, and I realized this is actually, they've had some experience doing puppets on the show. Can you think of the
Right,
previous
yeah.
puppet that they've had on the show?
Bob Bilby.
Bob Bilby. So if you look
Yep.
at the design for Bob Bilby, like one of the things I love about Unicourse is his funny little roundy arms.
Yeah.
Like I've got some toys that have got those arms, which are great. They're kind
Yeah.
of weighted a bit, and the way they move is just super funny. It's just really comical because their head sort of moves and then the arm goes around. Bob Bilby's got exactly the same arms, so he's just kind of like,
Right.
you know, half the head down. He's exactly the same as Unicourse. So they've been doing, you know, they've had a couple of rounds of doing a puppet of approximately that shape.
Bob Bilby was the prototype.
Yeah,
Is
he
that what
really
we're
was.
Bob Bilby walked so that Unicourse could run.
You know, neither of them have legs, right?
What are you talking about? Their legs are not.
I love the way that when Unicourse is running, he pulls Bandit across the table. In that first scene, he does it. And then there's the second scene where he's lying on his back on the floor, and he's just like trying to run out of scene. And that's when Bandit has his wonderful tilt. Yeah.
The line. You take it,
The
Frank.
line kills me because in an episode where there is meta breaking and wall breaking all over the place, this is the one that gets me. Is just, so the funny thing is, I do this to myself. And honestly, when I watched it again, he could have looked dead into camera in saying that, and it still would have worked.
Yeah.
But in that moment in the Healer household, no one else is in the room. He's saying that for his benefit to just verbalize how silly a situation have I gotten myself into once again with this puppet. Like,
And I love just before that, Unicorn says a line. He's like, "I'm going to get that." And Bandit goes, "Oh no," because he can already tell where he's going with it. And he hasn't even gotten there yet. He's
And
like,
hasn't-
"Oh no, the momentum's already here. I have to keep on going with this." Like, I'm driving myself into a corner.
And you mentioned just before that, just after, can we talk about the real star of this episode for a second?
Yeah.
To coin a phrase, the broccoli. Because I think, isn't it straight after that? The funny thing is, I do this to myself line that the title card comes up. And it's puppets, but isn't it the broccoli on the
Yeah, it's
title
broccoli.
card?
the broccoli is on the title card. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I don't know what that says. I can't read.
That's right. I forgot that was.
I don't know if that's verbatim. I'll have to check it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you're pretty close. Yeah.
dear, that's the most removed from what it should say since I think in Bus was it the
Yeah.
grannies who said this episode.
So it's like,
is called, forget. I love when they play with it. Actually, they also played with it in Unicourse when Chili said, "Unfortunately."
Yeah.
But you mentioned, Frank, on the socials and whatnot, they gave a little bit of a wink to maybe would see Unicourse again in this drop.
Yep.
And we had a little bit of a heads up when we spoke to a young man named Joe Brumm.
Oh, yes.
The
I've heard of him.
listeners might have seen that in our feed. It wasn't a big deal. But he had to, it was all he could do to stop from spoiling. Like, because we asked him about things that hit the cutting room floor that he wished could stay. And he did mention, he said, "Look, I won't spoil the episode, but it was a Unicourse line." And that got us all very excited that we'd see Unicourse
that's
again.
right. Yeah.
But I mean, I won't do it justice telling the story because I think maybe Joe Brumm can tell a story a little bit better than me. I don't know. The world might agree.
Just a couple of seasons worth. Yeah.
and so please, listeners, scroll back in the feed a little bit, and it's one of the Canine News episodes, Joe Brumm interview, and he somewhere in there he tells a story about what was going to be embellished about the kind of things.
He was giggling while saying
Unicorns
that
are saying. I still just think about that and laugh and laugh.
You know, we have to stop name dropping Joe Brumm at some point.
We do at some
or
point.
he's just never going to come back.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that as I was editing like the last 5 episodes. We do exactly the same joke, and I'm just thinking, Joe Brumm has listened to a couple of these episodes. Are we just, is he just going to set sick of the joke?
And then he finally does come back and he's like, oh, hey, Joe. Just really underplay it.
Just act like it's no big deal. He goes, fellas, don't pretend you haven't been fanning over me in every episode ever since you spoke to me.
Yeah, we're just not needy at all, are we? We'll wait 3 days and then we'll text. I think we have to go back to the start, though, because the whole sequence with, there's the chewing with the mouth open, okay, him coming out, him also being gross, and then him falling in love with Chili, which is brilliant because you've got the focus pull shot where it's the, and then you got the glossy shot where Chili's effectively doing like a hair flick.
Oh man,
which is
just needed to be like Dreamweaver playing in the background.
Yeah, so good.
And then just like the way he does the hand lick and then like the horn back, like check me out, and just sort of the little shoulder shimmy and all that sort of. So many get a little good.
So Toots, when are we getting married? Never. How about never?
Oi, check me out. Just like that.
It's almost like a vehicle for Bandit to say the things that he really deep down thinks he's cool enough to say.
It's 20-year-old Bandit in the form of a puppet.
Yeah, he behaves himself because he knows that you should, but it's like that puppet frees him. There's a lot of Bandit in Unicourse, more than I'm sure Bandit would admit in public. But Bandit is that cool.
We've talked about it previously. I think it was in Bus. It's nice how in these various worlds of play, Chili and Bandit end up getting together or being in love with one another.
Line.
So even via Unicourse, he's still in love with Chili and still finds her attractive.
Yeah.
It's just cute. It's
and
nice.
The wedding shot. It's just a really nice still shot of a wedding photo of Chili and I'm so invested in their relationship.
Just have that printed and put it on your desk. Just
see, I remember.
Yeah.
Remember it well.
No, it just reminds me of if you've seen Joss Whedon's Dollhouse.
Yes.
There's a couple of the whole thing is characters are effectively having their minds wiped over and over and over again. But there's these two characters who always kind of they always
find their way back to each
other. So it's kind of like that as well. Regardless of what reality they exist in, they're always together. It's cute.
That is.
All right, I think we've danced around it enough. Can we?
Oh my word!
Can we rip the Band-Aid off here?
This is
because new Bluey episodes seem to get headlines and trending on Twitter and all the rest of it. But this episode broke the mold in many ways, and I saw articles ranging from "Oh my god, this is the best thing ever" to "Oh my god, they've destroyed the show," blah 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 blah, and rubbish like that.
Get out.
I think also after this episode had aired, our friends at the Gotta Be Done podcast spoke to that same gentleman, Mr. Joe Brumm.
Oh, Joe Brumm.
Joe Brumm, you know the guy. And
stop it. Stop.
I've just said we should stop that, and I keep doing it.
You mentioning that we should stop it has just invigorated me more.
And basically, they asked Joe about that, and the hand you see animating Bluey is Joe Brumm.
Mm-hmm.
That whole sequence was actually his idea, and apparently something he really had to push for to get into the final edit.
Yeah, I'll paraphrase him, but I think he described it in that interview, thank you very much, Kate and Mary, as probably the most fought for or the most difficult fight of season 3, if not the whole series.
The whole series, yeah.
But he said, when it happened and the crew saw it and everything, there's just cheers.
Brilliant.
And deservedly so. I was gobsmacked.
Yeah. You just couldn't believe what you were watching. You just sit there going, Is my TV broken? That's when the slow pan starts and you start seeing the edge of the frame, you're like, what's going on here? And then you realize what's happening. And again, from that interview with Kate and Mary, that whole sequence that lasts maybe 7 or 8 seconds of footage, possibly a bit more than that. It was like an hour and a half of Joe. Joe's hand clicking the buttons, dragging the things, animating Bluey literally in front of your eyes, just sped up into 10 seconds.
And we all had that moment, that first moment, like when we first came to this show, and we're like, oh, we're watching another kids show. Oh, this is a good kids show. And then we all had that moment where we went, wait a minute, no, this isn't a good kid show, something else is happening here. Like
This
once in a lifetime magic is
Yeah.
occurring,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's enough that they've done that when for all of us the first time. But how do they keep doing it?
Yeah.
If you give me one of those moments, it's incredible. But they keep, every time I watch a new episode, there's so many throughout this whole series. It's just like, oh, magic is happening again.
Yeah.
Oh, magic is happening, and
It's just like paradigm shift after paradigm shift.
yeah. That's a much quicker way of saying it. It's funny that these guys
Yeah.
keep saying what I mean to say
It's
quicker.
strange how that happens.
The moment beforehand, like, have you ever thought about whether you're a puppet? And she just
Yeah.
kind of laughs it off. Was anybody else thinking? Because I think like most people, completely blindsided by it. I was thinking maybe she'd do the classic look under the bed, phew type thing.
Oh,
just
yeah.
You know,
Oh,
yeah, gonna go to bed. Maybe he actually got to me a little bit more than I thought. But yes, then the panning out and the realization that we're gonna get this fourth wall break.
Yeah.
Joe was talking about it in the interview that you mentioned. Maybe someone will see it and they'll be inspired to become an animator.
Yeah.
Because I really
100%.
think... So I want to ask you, because prior to that, what did we have? We had the sequence where Unicorn, he's sad because he didn't manage to woo Chili, and he's just like hanging out outside, and he's realized he's now a puppet.
And the line,
Yeah.
oh, well, this won't be awkward.
That's right. And probably my favorite line of the episode, which is like, what are you doing? Well, whatever this guy wants, which is the most meta, sort of
Yeah.
layering
Yep.
of realization.
Yeah.
For me, it's very much... That's when he becomes Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story.
Uh-huh.
It's that whole
Yes,
thing of
that
years of
realization.
academy training wasted.
Yeah, yeah.
My life is a lie. He says, my life is a
Yeah.
lie. So
Yeah.
it's that realization that, all this sort of stuff that you've built up to. And I think as well, Joe in that interview was talking about when he was playing Unicorns. So presumably he just says it very off the cuff. So I assume it must be something
Yeah.
he did with his kids.
happens in his real life.
Like
Yeah,
they'd
yeah.
always try and convince him he was a puppet, and then that he's trying
Yeah.
to move around that and have that interesting existential thing. All that to say, moved around all of that. What did you guys think the moral was of if you're nobody, you get to be everyone?
I'm so glad you
Yeah.
asked that, because I really think that there was intended to be
Yeah.
something in that.
For me, that doesn't make sense until you have the ending.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
it's kind of like this idea of like, okay, you get to be everyone. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about the realization that, Bluey is in fact a puppet. Oh, puppets get to be everyone. The Healer family is everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Through being a representation,
Yeah.
you get to be something that means everybody's experience. You get to be something that everyone relates to.
Yeah.
You get to be that central idea that is meaningful, is like so in that way
100%,
that
man.
first idea I didn't quite get what it was, but
Yeah.
as soon as then you get the gut punch at the end of
You needed
like,
that
this is a
line,
show
yeah.
about puppets, you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
I kind
okay.
of see it. I could not agree more. And I kind of see it like why lots of people love pets, because if they don't, if you don't have a communicatable identity of your own, people can fill you.
Yes.
And I'm
You
not
can
saying that's a
project.
bad thing.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
can project
Yep.
all that, and that is by design what I feel like they're doing, because Bluey belongs to everybody in the most fantastic way. Because I
you
can't
do
agree more.
you feel it with yourself.
100%.
Yep.
They say never meet your heroes, because you invest so much in an idea that you're risking disappointment. But if you're quote no one quote, if you don't have that identity of your own, or you are a vessel or a vehicle for telling stories like the Healer family are,
You can be
then
anyone you want.
then in the way that I feel like they're trying to touch on here, they are everything, and they can be everything to everyone, which is like, I mean, it's no surprise that the show is worldwide.
Look at the themes we're talking about, though, in a 7-minute kid show. Like, really? Like,
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying, but it boggles the mind that something like this in a ridiculous, what should be a ridiculous Unicorns episode of all episodes within
that's
Bluey, has this thing that just is frying our brains and the other people from around the world. Little sidebar to this. This is a bit of a for real life moment that's sort of tangentially related to this episode. We caught up with some friends. They've got kids a little bit older than Jack, and this was shortly after we had interviewed Joe Brumm. Not making a joke, it's just a fact. And they were saying, "Oh, did you know that Frank's got he's got a podcast that talks about Bluey?" And I said, "Yeah, I spoke to Joe Brumm, the creator of Bluey." And this little 4-year-old girl looks at me and goes, "What do you mean creator?" And then I've realized what I've done, because to this kid, Bluey
also,
is real.
the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta go.
Santa Claus.
And in that moment, I froze, and God bless her mum, who just cools a cucumber, just went, "Oh, creator's just another word for dad." All right, moving on. And then just moved the conversation on. And I just looked at her with my eyes and just went, "Thank you." Like,
Nice one, Mum.
so I wonder if there is a possibility, as much as we as adults who know how a show works, that there are kids out there who perhaps didn't understand fully what they were looking at, because Bluey to them is real. You know, there is that age point where you go from accepting what's on the screen as fact and real, to then understanding, oh, okay, this is how television works. There's actors, or there's writers, there's people who make this stuff, as opposed to actually legit looking in on a healer household in Brisbane type thing. And that was some of those more ridiculous articles I was referring to, was that they're saying, "Oh, they've destroyed kids' hopes and dreams." And I'm like, I think that's laying it on a little thick.
Yeah.
But
especially seeing as it's wound up so perfectly with the perfect line to end the episode.
Yeah.
It's kind of tongue-in-cheek downplaying the incredible thing we just saw, but it's also just really funny and really cute. Wow, that was a weird dream. Like it was one of those things that was so perfect. It was almost like I was hoping that would be the line as I was watching it for the first time, and then it was, and then the credits roll,
bang,
and I'm just thinking,
that's all I needed.
They just keep swinging for the fences and knocking it out of the park.
Yeah. And it's also that thing Joe's spoken about before, where he said, don't talk down to your audience. Kids are, yes, this isn't targeted as a kids show, but they're smarter than you think. And
100%.
I can imagine, kids of all ages seeing that sequence, maybe not understanding some of the deeper themes that we're talking about, but just going, "Oh, cool, we got to see how they make Bluey." And to Joe's point, maybe one of those kids grows up years from now to become an animator. Yeah. Like, how good.
And there's multiple things in there at the time. Like Joe did say about, you've got your thing for your adults, you got your thing for your 4-year-olds. There's more, and the music in there, let's not understate how beautiful that piece is from Joff and the Blue music team in that section. And what he said about they might not understand how beautiful it is and but they can feel it and they can experience it. Yeah, it's just, it's so good.
Is it fair to say, in the way that Sleepy Time was the seminal, arguably the episode of season 2, and I know we haven't seen all of season 3, but to date, would you consider this, in the same way that Sleepy Time broke a lot of boundaries, is this that episode for season 3?
No, it's space.
Marty really wants to talk about space, guys.
I used emotional bribery to try and get you guys to talk about space.
you totally did, and it didn't work just because I want to be prepared.
Do you really?
And I knew I didn't have the time to watch Space Oddity. See, I said Space Oddity, which is the David Bowie song. I meant Space Odyssey. This is how embarrassed I am that I call myself.
You're probably right, Frank. It is that paradigm shift, wall break, boundary break sort of scenario. It's stepping a little bit beyond expectations again. It's kind of like what Brendan was saying earlier. It is, just that extra layer of magic and possibility. They keep on going outside of the domain of play that they've been talking, and they've existed in so far, and they just kind of bump out an extra hole, and then you're like, okay, but now what's possible? There's all these additional extra things that are possible now that they've jumped over this particular, line. So I think that's the same case.
We've said it in a million ways, but I think it deserves to be said in as many ways as possible. But I feel like never has there been a show as deserved as Bluey as resting on one's laurels, because their laurels are so good that if anyone could justify in doing it, it's Bluey, and they're still freaking not doing it. They're still just pushing it.
True. BAUXITE.
Oh, yes! I almost forgot to say it. That is so funny and so niche. Did you guys, because I was gonna look up more about bauxite, but I knew from school that it is, I believe, the ore from which aluminium is refined.
Okay, yeah. Right.
But that's so funny that he chose to say bauxite.
Yeah, because I just
and the word was bauxite.
That would be a bandit word, wouldn't it?
Sure,
exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole sequence of bauxite as the word is hilarious. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the sorghum joke. It's just
Yeah,
like so
yeah,
randomly specific.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
perfect.
And that whole sequence is great because, as you said, they're trying to convince him he's a puppet, and then they literally
why I love
narrow it
this
down. So
guy.
you've got to say it at the same time. You're like, how's he going to play this? And he does, like, if you were the dad in that situation or the parent in that situation, that's pretty much how you'd play it. Like, the puppet's just this guy just macking around. I love this guy. Like,
I won't tell the whole thing because I know Joe Brumm did it better when we interviewed him, but it bears mentioning that there was going to be a bit in here where when Bandit was trying to prove that he's a puppet because he can read his mind or something,
that's it.
and he went on this massive rant and guessed exactly what he was thinking about a taco car. This invention of please listen to Joe Brumm tell the story. It's well worth it.
But I really like that whole sequence, especially when Bandit sort of caves and he's like, yes, you are a puppet. I'm sorry. And he just kind of like looks off and he's just so sorry about it when he finally admits.
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
Oh, and it should be worth mentioning how much fuel. Got to be done, ladies. Once again, thank you so much for the fuel you've given this episode in your interview when you directly questioned Joe Brumm about it. And it should be mentioned in the same fashion that we released our Joe Brumm interview. And then there were a few weeks before we started ceaselessly mentioning that we talked to Joe Brumm.
Yep.
And I was really worried that listeners would hear that as, they interviewed Joe Brumm. And then for a
never
couple of minutes, they're
talked
just
about it
never
again.
talking about it. And so
And now they won't
I think
stop
that's why
talking about it.
I think we're just trying to make it up for it. But in the same fashion, we should say that we've only just done a crossover episode with the Gotta Be Done ladies. So we would have dropped that, and then it would have been a little bit of time because we had a backlog of episodes, and now we're meant to, so
now we can talk about
now
it.
we'll just switch it to that. We'll give Joe a break,
and
we'll
you
be
remember that time we
insufferable
interviewed,
about how we got to do a crossover episode with Kate and Mary.
you know Kate and Mary, don't you?
Mary Kate,
Yeah,
from the
they're good
Republic,
friends of
Kate
ours.
Malone,
Yeah.
from the
Gotta be done.
Yeah.
We're like this, which you can't see because, again, audio. Crossing my fingers like this.
Yeah, he was, I promise.
One last thing I want to mention.
Yeah.
The way he says broccoli.
Yes.
Can I
opposite,
Can I
you know,
interest you in some broccoli?
Broccoli.
Broccoli. Oh,
And
broccoli.
that whole thing just makes it like, do you know the Cyrano story? Cyrano
I do, because I'm very worldly, but please remind me in your
For
own
Frank's
words.
benefit.
Of course.
Yes, thank you.
Totally.
I
Just
can't believe he doesn't know.
It's a classic sort of story about, a guy who wasn't very attractive, but he was a fantastic poet. And then he was kind of, his friends like, hey, help me woo this lady with your poetry. So she falls in love with this guy, but it's actually, the other guy's
His
poetry.
words. Okay.
So it's that sort of classic thing. There's a Futurama episode about it. There's you see that story get retold and retold, but like with them like behind the thing giving him hints of what he should be saying to the lady is classic, that sort of thing. But yeah, would you like some broccoli? The way he manages to say words that everybody should know how to say, like experiencing showers and those sorts of things the first time. That's really, really nice. But I love the broccoli. It's so cute. He's like trying so hard. He's plaited his goatee. He's got his hair like all combed and like his horn is swept back.
Yeah.
He's
I
really
like
dolled
your
himself
cute
up.
little
His
bow
character.
tie.
This guy, she loves the little bow tie. Why wouldn't you? He's adorable.
When the bow tie falls on the ground when he's outside slumped with and when he says, "Oh, gee, this won't be awkward," and
that's right.
you
He
can
just
see
drops it
the
down.
it just drops.
And there's one other
so defeated.
There's one other thing, because Chili's reaction to that is hilarious. I love whenever you see the healer's gums. Any shot in which, like, because that's the animation just goes to the next level, and there's some other episodes where I'm going to mention it again. But when she's like hacking and like upset about it, like, there's just so much to it, and I'm like, every time it's whenever you see their gums, that it's just like on point.
Yeah, that's right. Because Unicorse does it when he has the broccoli.
Yeah,
and then she does it when she sees him eat his tick.
Yeah.
and also like what was that great little line from Bingo? Like Bluey's like, nobody likes eating broccoli, and Bingo's like, except me, and just eats some broccoli. It's like I love that.
Nobody
Bingo
eats
loves
broccoli
her
because they
vegetables.
want to.
Because except me. Oh, Bingo, you keep doing you. Yeah, I just feel so grateful, and I just want to say thank you to the whole Ludo team. I will never think that I've seen everything that this show can do because of episodes like this.
Yeah. So there's still surprises after 3 seasons. That's impressive on any television, let alone what is classed as a kids show, but we know it to be so much more.
Absolutely. Well, thanks as always, Frank.
Well, thanks, mate. It's been fun.
Thanks as always, Marty.
Not a problem, Brendan.
And I only hope that we can keep surprising you, listeners.
Ooh. Challenge accepted.
BAUXITE. No.
But that was a surprise. Maybe we can find some tools for mining and refining bauxite.
Where would you get those?
Oh, I reckon you might be able to find them down aisle 300.
Left at the fake grass.
If you hit it from Lingo, you've gone too far.
Awesome. Should we do the end clap?
Yeah, let's do
thinking
the
in case I stuff it up. And in 3, 2, 1. Nice
Yeah,
one,
that was a good
mate.
one.
I usually slice in Josh's outro here with the. Did I put it on the OneDrive or was that?
Yeah,
on the-
it's with all the other ones.
Oh yes, here it is. I'll just select that plane here, and I better save it.
Yes, don't forget to save. We've been there before.
Yeah, yikes. And play.
Created and produced by Frank, Brendan and Marty. You can follow the Hammerbarn Project on facebook.com/HammerbarnProj, @HammerbarnProj on Twitter, or Hammerbarn_project on Instagram. Theme featuring Nibblings, Kaylee, Jade, Ashley and Reese, and PA announcements by brother-in-law, me, Josh. Thanks for listening, and remember to get down to Hammerbarn for cheap shovels.